spaces. Thank you. Please switch on your videos. It would be really nice. I'm sure Prachi would also like to speak to people. Relationships are made with people, not with black boxes. So let's have those videos on. And if you have questions during the session when Prachi is speaking, please feel free to put it in the chat. And of course, as always, we will have the last 10-15 minutes for specifically for Q&A. Thank you, Amol, George, for putting the video on. Um, and we will also share a very, very brief feedback form towards the end. This is for us to know what more you want to hear from us, what are the kind of sessions that you would like, and we would love to bring them to you. Yeah. So with that out of the way, let me introduce our speaker for the day, Prachi. Thank you so much for coming. It has been a pleasure coordinating with you and speaking to you for this session. She is an experienced clinical psychologist, trauma focused relationship therapist, and a certified clinical trauma professional with an MPhil in clinical psychology. That's a whole lot of stuff right there. She is the co-founder of Emotional Wellness Initiatives, an online psychological and emotional well-being services platform. She has 18 plus years of experience with specialty in couples, relationship, dating, intimacy, and recovery from trauma of emotional abuse. So we know for sure we have the right person today to speak about thousand questions that I have about this topic. So today's topic is toxic relationships, understanding the what, why, and how. And in Prachi, if I may, just tell you what I have in my mind in the context of relationship these days, especially in my therapy practice as well. The word I hear the most in with respect to relationship is toxic relation. And I often wonder how is it that everybody is going through or has a toxic relationship. And I wonder, is it me? Is it us? Is it them? Are we understanding toxic relationships wrong? What is it? I'm not sure. So today, like I said, I have 1,000 questions for you. And I'm sure our listeners also have 1,000 questions for you. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to you and thank you once again for coming. So over to you, Prachi. What are we looking at today?
Thank you, Anu. It's really a pleasure to be here. Pukar Foundation has been started by one of my very, very dear friends all the way back from college. And it was an honor and a pleasure to be asked to come here to do this webinar, and I'm very happy to be here. And I agree with you that we hear the word toxic a lot these days. And in fact, that is why I keep trying and doing these webinars, because I feel like it's now become overused, and a lot of people don't even know what real toxicity is. And I mean, exposure to social media, everything gets uh, diluted, and then like a lot of things get sort of misconstrued, misrepresented uh, by people who don't really have the in-depth understanding of what a psychological dynamic is. So I think it's a very important conversation that we are having today. I see a lot of people. I'm very happy that a lot of people have joined, because everybody who's here today, I think, will take back a few nuggets of information, which they will then probably pass forward to other people in their lives. And I think that's how we will, even if it's like a small population, we will make a difference in helping people really understand what toxicity is. Because if you don't understand it, then you can't fight it.
Beautiful,
So, yeah.
beautifully said. And I'm sure you'll agree, Prachi. Firstly, for being in a relationship, you need to show yourself. Nobody here seems to be showing their faces. I would love to see some more videos of.
Yes, I think, yes, people, please, I do not like talking to blank screens.
Yes,
It doesn't matter
actually.
where you are, what your background is, if you're like somebody's on the way and, all of that, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. We're just having a conversation. I would love to talk to you face to face. Talking to a blank screen is never pleasant. And thank you so much for
Certainly.
turning on your cameras. It means a lot. And let's have a
Yeah.
conversation. Don't worry about it. Like, we are all, I mean, it's a very casual discussion. Let's just have a conversation. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Thank
turning
you
on your
all for
cameras.
switching on the camera. So, Prachi, let's start with what is a toxic relationship? How do we understand this better?
Hmm. So today, I just to add to what you said in my introduction, I actually have a book coming out on toxic relationships in 2025. And a lot of what thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to it. It is a culmination of 18 years of my work and personal experiences. It has a lot of my personal story, my own experiences with toxic relationships, how I got to it, how I got out of it, all of that. So really looking forward to it. And a lot of what you're going to hear today is also coming out of that book. A lot of my pointers, my takeaways. So, to start with, to answer your question, what is a toxic relationship? First thing that I want to really stress on is that a toxic relationship is a dynamic. It is a dynamic which exists between two people. हम जब टॉक्सिसिटी की बात करते हैं तो इज इट ओके इफ आई काइंड ऑफ मिक्स हिंदी एंड इंग्लिश और एवरीबडी प्रेफर्स ओनली इंग्लिश व्हाट इज इट दैट यू गाइस लाइक या इट्स ओके फॉर मी टू मिक्स इट okay awesome I'm seeing few thumbs ups great see that's why it's important to have the camera on then I can see your reactions you don't have to speak great so it's a dynamic two people make a toxic dynamic you will also hear a lot of the word abuse used interchangeably with toxic. So we will get to that later, how you're going to distinguish. But right now, I'm only talking about toxic. And it's a dynamic between two people where both people are losing parts of themselves, triggering each other in a way that is actually driving them apart. Toxic relationships actually start to chip away at the people involved, at their self-esteem, and they make people bitter in the long run. इसमें the important thing is कि actually जो दो लोग एक toxic relationship में होते हैं, they actually want connection. They don't want to be driven away from each other. They want the connection, but the way they are going about it is actually creating more problems for them, and therefore it is becoming toxic. टॉक्सिक एज अ वर्ड इज अ डेफिनेशन इज समथिंग दैट इज कमिंग फ्रॉम इनसाइड यू अगर आप बायोलॉजिकली भी देखो ना तो पॉइजन और टॉक्सिक में टॉक्सिन में फर्क होता है पॉइजन इज समथिंग दैट कम्स फ्रॉम आउटसाइड टॉक्सिन इज समथिंग दैट योर बॉडी प्रोड्यूसेस so when we say a toxic relationship actually it is a dynamic which is being fed by the people involved और उनके अंदर से कुछ निकल के आ रहा है जो उस चीज को बहुत एग्रीवेट कर रहा है एंड जस्ट टू क्लैरिफाई हियर हम बहुत रोमांटिक रिलेशनशिप के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ही बात करते हैं व्हेन वी से टॉक्सिक रिलेशनशिप्स पार्टनर रिलेशनशिप्स मैरिजेस बट ये किसी भी दो लोगों के बीच में हो सकता है इट कैन हैपन बिटवीन फ्रेंड्स इट कैन हैपन बिटवीन colleagues bosses and subordinates it can happen between parent and child so whatever I say today even though it may sound very partner oriented and my book is also primarily focused on that but I'd like you to keep in mind that the dynamic or the principles apply everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you, Prachi. That is, I think what was eye-opening for me in that was that it is a dynamic that both people are bringing in. It's not about you are toxic or I am toxic. It's about what we are doing with each other. That's a beautiful point you brought out. I think that's really eye-opening. Even if we close the session here now, that is a big takeaway. Totally changed my way of looking at this. So thank you for that. And
Glad.
thanks for also clarifying that, it's not only about romantic. It could also be a parent,
Yes.
child, it could be siblings, it could be anything where you're feeling eroded and not finding the correct connection, right? So how do we kind of tell that we are being toxic or that we are in a toxic relationship? How do we tell?
The most common sign would be if you're experiencing this constant oscillation between a need for connection, but a mutual triggering happening every time that connection is attempted. For example, let's say I have a partner and all I want from that partner is a little involvement in my life. एक छोटा सा interest आप दिखाओ मेरे day में, what has happened with my day or the things that I've done. And I'm actually reaching out to them to get that. I'm saying, I want to tell them that I want you to take interest in my day, but what I end up saying is, तुमको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता ना मेरा दिन कैसे गया, ठीक है? But and obviously it builds up over time. It's not like a sudden thing that will happen the first day, but it builds up. And when the partner hears it, they will immediately go on the defensive. They are also not trying to see ki when she's saying it like this, it's actually coming from a place of pain or a connection built, right? But they immediately they feel accused. So it'll be like how can you say that? तुम्हें मतलब why do you always misunderstand me? और फिर वो वहां से then it kind of starts. तो मोस्ट कॉमन साइन यही होता है कि दोनों लोगों को कनेक्शन चाहिए होता है, बट इट every time that connection is attempted, a mutual triggering happens. Another sign is that you will experience conflicting feelings for the same person. तो उसी इंसान से आपको प्यार भी चाहिए और उसी इंसान से आपको सबसे ज्यादा गुस्सा भी आता है, सबसे ज्यादा you get like infuriated by the same person, and then you can't figure this out because that's one of the things that a lot of people get stuck with also कि मैं जैसे बहुत सारे there are a lot of these Facebook groups that are there where people come and share their issues and problems and all, and I'm a part of those. I see a lot of times where somebody will come and write about something that they're going through with somebody in their life, itna pain and so much of conflict and all, but in the end they will say, but I don't know what to do because I love him so much. Right? And that is exactly what I'm talking about. This conflicting feelings for the same person who's sort of you're feeling the torment with, you're also feeling the same amount of intense attachment towards them. And another sign is a lot of arguments and fights which turn personal. जब भी argument होता है वो बहुत personal हो जाता है. It just escalates and it becomes like, oh, you are saying this about me. So they'll go off the central issue, और वो कई बार it will go into उस दिन ये हुआ था और 6 महीने पहले वो हुआ था, and then it just kind of becomes a circular argument and then they don't get anywhere. So they will have multiple fights but वो कुछ resolve नहीं होगा. So these are some of the signs that can tell you that it's a toxic dynamic.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know. It's like almost each one of us here who has videos on is nodding as if you're talking about our lives. I'm sure each one of us has experienced exactly these dynamics in our
Yeah.
relationship somewhere or the other, right? But that also brings me to the question that ऐसे लगता है कि this is तो हर relationship में normal है, इसमें कौन सी
Yes.
बड़ी बात है? Why is it toxic? So how do I
Yes.
differentiate the normal challenge that ठीक है, I should manage it and work around it versus toxic? What determines that?
Work around it तो आप toxic में भी करोगे. It has scope, right? But yes, the question is very important कि हम ये कैसे figure out करें कि ये regular conflict हो रहा है या it is turning towards toxicity. So this is like a direct lift from my book. I'll give you 5 aspects or areas that you need to look at when you're trying to figure out if this is turning toxic. First is the type of communication that you're having. Communication becomes toxic when it ceases to be a means to improve a situation and when it becomes a cyclic display of emotion which is intended only to hurt or manipulate or attack the person that you are speaking with. कम्युनिकेशन बाय इटसेल्फ उसका गोल तो हमेशा यही होता है ना कि हम कम्युनिकेट क्यों करते हैं, कुछ रिजॉल्व करने के लिए करते हैं. लेकिन अगर कम्युनिकेशन ऐसा बन गया है कि वो सिर्फ अटैक करने के लिए किया जा रहा है, आई वांट टू हर्ट यू सो मच बिकॉज आई वांट यू टू नो हाउ मच यू आर हर्टिंग मी, right? Then it's probably turning toxic. That's the first aspect. Second aspect is expectations. It's absolutely normal to have expectations in relationships. But when those expectations are forcefully made responsibilities of the other person at the cost of changing the other person, then there is a possibility of toxicity developing. कि मतलब मैं कल ही I was working with a couple, तो they signed up for one of my short term programs. तो उनका जब ऐसी बात निकली तो I asked them that what attracted to you to each other in the first time that you met and all that. So they were saying something or the other, and the girl said that I really liked the fact that he was very quiet. I was very attracted to that. I was very quiet, very aloof and all, and वो एक शादी में मिले थे, तो she said कि there was another guy who like directly approached me, और वो मेरे को थोड़ा सा off putting लगा था, ये एकदम ऐसे quiet था. अभी उसका सबसे बड़ा challenge in the entire relationship is कि ये aloof क्यों रहता है. This is what happens. Right? She's like
Why are
मेरे
we
को
so
connection,
complicated?
like मेरे को connection ही feel नहीं होता. I don't, मतलब you know, I want him to text me every time he's out. I want him to text me every hour when he's away. I want him to send me reels. I want him to do this, but he's not doing it. And when I tell him to do it, he says, "This is not my personality. Like, what is this? Why are you not invested in the relationship?" ठीक है, तो it's like what the same thing that attracted you in the first place now is the quality that you don't like. So अब आप उसको change करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो. So then फिर तो वो इंसान वो रहेगा ही नहीं आपने जिससे प्यार किया था ना. ठीक है. So then it's like that is why the expectations aspect is very very important कि आप you are you getting into a relationship with the person for who they really are, or are you getting in for an idea that you're carrying in your head of who they will become, because that is where problems start to happen. So third aspect is disagreements. जैसे मैंने पहले भी बोला था कि अगर disagreements जो हो रहे हैं, disagreements are natural in any equation for that matter, but if they are being taken personally, या फिर it is becoming a win or lose situation कि what is more important is for me to be proved right in this argument. मुझे नहीं फर्क पड़ता कि रिजॉल्व हो कि नहीं, तुम ये मान लो that I am right. I made the first point and I made the right point. That is a problem. And more reacting than responding is happening during a disagreement. कि आप सुन नहीं रहे हो उनका रिस्पॉन्स, आप सिर्फ वो बोल रहे हो जो आप बोलना चाहते हो, regardless of what the other person is saying. So this is a sign of toxicity developing. And like it has gone beyond like a normal communication challenge. Fourth aspect is insecurity and fear-based choices. Insecurity सबकी होती हैं. All of us are carrying some or the other emotional insecurities within us. But if that insecurity is driving your relationship, it could be again any relationship, and you're making your choices based on the fear that is generated out of that insecurity, आप हमेशा scarcity mindset से operate करोगे. So you are not paying attention to the nourishment that the relationship is providing. You're not paying attention to the good aspects or what is happening which is fulfilling in the relationship, but your insecurity is so overpowering that your everything is seen from that lens. That's that can make a relationship toxic. And final aspect is anger versus aggression. Anger is a very natural emotion, सबको आता है. फाइट हो रही है तो गुस्सा तो आएगा ही, लेकिन अगर वो अग्रेशन में टर्न हो रहा है, internalized or externalized. So, you know, somebody is punching a wall, somebody is throwing things, or internalized hai, to you want to hurt yourself, you want to like bang your head somewhere, or you just want to, for that moment, just want to do something to hurt yourself to just stop the emotional pain. Then this is a danger sign that गुस्सा आ रहा है लेकिन वो इस लेवल तक एस्केलेट हो रहा है कि वो अग्रेशन में टर्न हो रहा है. That is a sure shot sign that something is wrong.
So, firstly, thank you for a preview into your book, Rashi. I don't know, were you trying to say something else? I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No. I was going to hand it over to you.
Good. So, and I think I feel very lucky to have a preview into your book. I can't wait for it. This is beautiful that you've, made this so concisely. Look out for these 5 things. But one question I have is like when you are feeling, let's say, anger or displeasure in a relationship, ये सब I mean I will always feel like somebody is showing me anger or somebody showing बहुत ज्यादा expectation कर रहे हैं मुझसे या I mean how do I distinguish, how do I draw that line? Is it usually with the help of someone external, or is it even possible for me within a relationship while I'm feeling this to be so present to identify these things?
So I think for responding to this, we probably have to understand what anger does for us as an emotion. हमारे पास हर emotion का function होता है. We have been programmed with emotions because there is a function that every emotion is serving. A lot of us think that anger is a negative emotion. There is no positive and negative emotion. Everything has its utility. Anger का काम होता है, one, to draw attention to a sense of injustice. Whenever you will perceive some, whether it is happening like that or not, that doesn't matter right now. But जब भी आपको ये perceive होगा that something is unfair, you will feel a spark of anger. So anger also comes in times where you're feeling helpless, because it is supposed to give you a boost in that moment to overcome that feeling of helplessness or to create a sense of temporary mastery over the situation. ठीक है, तो आपको गुस्सा कभी भी आ रहा है, दैट इज नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम. आप उस गुस्से का क्या कर रहे हो, दैट इज द इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग टू थिंक अबाउट. सो इफ आई जैसे यू सेड दैट यू नो, कभी मुझे ऐसा लग सकता है कि यार एवरीबडी इज डिमांडिंग थिंग्स आउट ऑफ मी, हैविंग एन एक्सपेक्टेशन, एंड दैट मेक्स मी एंग्री. First, you know, we have to acknowledge the fact that okay, I am angry about this. All right, but then what do I do? Because if you're only reacting from anger, then you're making an impulsive behavior or an impulsive choice, जिसका एंगर को कोई मतलब नहीं है उस. ठीक है, बायोलॉजिकल प्रोग्रामिंग जो है वो आपको हमेशा मोटिवेट करेगी एक्शन के लिए. मेरे को ये इमोशन आया, कुछ कर डालो. ठीक है, बट दैट इज कमिंग फ्रॉम अ वेरी एवोल्यूशनरी एस्पेक्ट. लाइक दिस प्रोग्रामिंग इज इन आवर ब्रेन्स फ्रॉम व्हेन वी वर लिविंग इन जंगल्स. ठीक है, तो वहां जरूरी था ये कि मतलब कुछ पीछे पड़ा है, कोई जानवर पीछे पड़ा है या कोई अटैक कर रहा है, तो एकदम से फाइट और फ्लाइट, यू नो, कुछ करो. बट बिकॉज वी लिव इन अ वेरी डिफरेंट सोसाइटी राइट नाउ, बट आवर ब्रेन इज एग्जैक्टली द सेम. सो नाउ वी हैव टू थिंक अबाउट not giving in to the impulsivity that emotion is bringing, but to wait and see, wait, then what is it that I want to achieve from this situation. So like I said in the beginning, that if my partner has come home really late and they have not called me, they have not texted me, and it's making me furious, so when they come home, what I really want to convey is that I was worried. You know, I was worried and I felt like you don't care because you did not even think about informing me. But what I do, because I'm angry, the first thing that happens is I attack. Not physically, but like, you know, verbally. I will just start by an accusation. So wahan pe fir I have defeated the purpose. I'm not going to achieve my goal. मैं जब ऐसे बहुत सारे लोगों को ये बात बोलती हूँ ना, तो people have this first reaction कि तो ऐसे बहुत कैलकुलेटेड नहीं हो जाएगा सारा कम्युनिकेशन, यू नो, देन इट फील्स ये तो हम कैसे हर चीज ऐसे कैलकुलेट कर करके बात करें एंड ऑल. बट यू नो, दिस इज अ रियल बिग मिथ, बिकॉज एज ह्यूमंस वी बीन गिफ्टेड विद लैंग्वेज. So if we are not using that language smartly, then what are we even doing with the gift? फिर तो मतलब then we are just a slave of impulses, no? So we have to stop looking at it as calculative and we have to start looking at it as smart communication, because at the end of the day, अगर आप अपने गोल से और दूर जा रहे हो by doing what you're doing, तो फायदा ही क्या है फिर?
I love that last line that you said. You know, सिर्फ अगर ये याद रखने, right? What I'm doing, is it taking me towards or away from what I want?
Yes,
I want
exactly.
connection. Like I want, so I will make the effort to be more mindful or be more aware. Very nicely summarized in that one line. And thank you for that very beautiful, detailed explanation on, you know, what emotions do to us. It's always amazing for me to hear that, no matter how many times I hear it.
It's really wonderful.
It is. And you said in the beginning of the session something about differentiating between abusive relationships and toxic relationships. So, can you shed some light on that?
Sure. There's a very, very simple distinction. And मैंने इसीलिए शुरू में भी ये चीज बोली थी कि बहुत जगह it is used interchangeably, especially in your Instagram reels and, you know, blog posts and all of that. बहुत simple distinction ये होता है, abuse is a one-way dynamic and toxicity is a two-way dynamic. क्या abusive relationship में toxicity हो सकती है? Yes. But it is not necessary कि toxic relationship में abusiveness. Okay, so every abusive relationship also eventually will turn toxic, but every toxic relationship is not abusive. Okay, and when I say one-way dynamic, what I mean is abuse is always about power and control. Power and control by one person. So there will always be a clear power dynamic where one person will dominate and the other person will always feel completely helpless. And ये again मैं बोल रही हूँ ये किसी भी relationship में हो सकता है, ठीक है? Whereas in toxicity, both partners go through emotional turmoil, heartache, eventually want to connect with each other but don't know how to, and they stay trapped in a cycle. लेकिन abuse में जो ये पूरा emotional up and down, the turmoil that happens will only be experienced by one person who's lower in the power dynamic. जो इंसान exert कर रहा है manipulation और control, they'll be chill as hell. उनको फर्क नहीं पड़ता. They wouldn't even register that something is happening, and if you bring it out, then what happens is gaslighting. That, oh, but you're crazy for feeling like this. I don't think so. I think everything is okay in this relationship. So this is the primary difference. If someone is exerting control and only one partner is feeling the brunt of it, the bearing the brunt of it, then most likely we are looking at abuse and not toxicity.
Oh, very simply put. I like that. And I think we'll have to call you back for the other term you used, which was
Happy to.
yeah. I mean, all of these terms that are getting thrown around on Instagram, right? Narcissistic and this
Oh
relationship.
yeah.
So you'll have to come back a bunch of times to speak to us
We
on
should
that.
like totally do a session on how everyone is not a narcissist.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please. Cool. So, what I'm hearing also from you is that obviously we all have a need for connection, and abusive maybe the person who's being abusive has a different need, has a need for power, control versus connection. But how are we finding ourselves in these kind of situations? Why are we putting ourselves in let's say toxic relationships? Just to keep to the topic.
This has to do with a huge unconscious and subconscious locha that happens in our minds. It's a very psychological process. But to put it very simply, we are finding ourselves in toxic relationships because we seek connection based on our greatest emotional voids. These voids, they create core needs that drive all our decisions, and we want to extract them out of the very person who cannot give it to us. Okay, I will give you an example of this. Let's say, as a child, somebody grows up in a family where there was nobody emotionally available to the child. Okay, which very automatically, what will do is that the child will learn to do things or prove themselves to be lovable to extract that availability or that care and affection, right? Now, this sets a template. Now, when you become an adult and let's say you want a romantic partner, right? You will invariably be attracted to emotionally unavailable people. Even though you want availability, but you will go there. Why? Because this is the most familiar energy to you. This is what you've grown up in. Your nervous system has become programmed to even only just recognize this. We have to remember that our nervous systems are completely programming based. So it will only care about the familiar. It doesn't care about healthy. You have to program it for healthy. So it's like, if you only eat French fries for the next 1 year from here, that's what your body recognizes as normal. ठीक है, अब आपको फिर डायबिटीज हो गई, फिर कोलेस्ट्रॉल बढ़ गया, फिर डॉक्टर ने बोला सैलेड खाओ, ठीक है, अब आप सैलेड जब खाओगे तो बॉडी रिजेक्ट ही करेगी उसको, ठीक है, इवन दो लॉजिकली दिस इज हेल्दी फॉर मी, but the body will not accept it. It will be like, where are my French fries? Right? So it's the same funda that applies here, that the energy is familiar, that unavailable, distant energy is familiar. Like that couple that I was telling you, I have a feeling yesterday was my first session, but I think this is what is going on with them also. Like she is drawn to someone who's not freely available to her. Okay, क्योंकि वहाँ it goes and triggers something in you that makes you want to extract that love from this person only, because वही आपने सीखा है ना कि जो प्राइमरी केयर गिवर्स थे जहां से अप्रूवल आना चाहिए था, उसके लिए बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ी और फिर भी शायद नहीं आया, तो वो हर बार वो लगता है, इट रीप्लेस, वी साइको एनालिटिकली वी कॉल इट रेपिटेशन कंपल्शन, So we replay over and over again the same conflict in our lives, in our relationships, because the idea is that if only I can get love this time, everything will settle down. सब ठीक हो जाएगा. ठीक है, तो मैं इसका एक एग्जाम्पल भी देती हूँ कि जैसे प्यास लगी है और देयर इज अ रिवर, देयर फ्लोइंग रिवर, बट नहीं, मुझे वहां से पानी नहीं पीना है, मुझे वो बगल में जो पत्थर है उसमें से निकाल के पानी पीना है, तभी मेरी प्यास बुझी. देन ओनली इट इज वर्थ इट, बिकॉज बिना मेहनत के कहाँ प्यार मिलता है. ठीक है, बिकॉज इफ इट इज कमिंग, एंड दीज आर द पीपल who will actually friend zone the people who are actually freely offering love. Because
Yeah.
I don't know love should come freely, and if it is coming freely, या तो इस बंदे में कुछ गड़बड़ है, या फिर ये कुछ something is wrong, this cannot happen, I don't deserve this. So this is how we get into toxic dynamics, because now I am with an emotionally unavailable person and I'm trying my hardest to turn them into someone who becomes available for me. It's not going to end well.
And it's basically because I have practiced that behavior throughout my life. It has nothing to do with the other
And same thing
person.
will happen on the other side also. Like for them also, it may be a dynamic where they are also attracted to someone who's throwing themselves at them. Oh, I will fix all your pain and I'll do anything for you and everything for you. Maybe they also need that, so they are also drawn. तो अब ये आ गए और फिर ये अटक गए. I had read something very interesting once कि हम बोलते हैं ना जैसे opposites attract, but this is half the story. Because you think about a magnet and opposite poles, what happens? They attract, but then what happens? They get stuck.
ये कोई बोलता नहीं है.
So
Half the
opposites
story.
attract, yes, but they get stuck.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that, and this is all this underplay underneath.
Wow. I feel like I should just sit here and reflect for 5 minutes on what you just said.
Somebody's put
Beautiful.
a
Thank you.
comment also. I'm glad that you found
Yeah.
this, Jayendra. You
Yeah.
found this helpful. Thank you.
So I think you also touched upon, I think, what I was going to ask you next about personal experiences, or is it also what we are reading and seeing in social media and society
Yes.
that we're getting into this kind of like ऐसे होना चाहिए या ऐसे होना चाहिए, right? Relationship.
For
Do you
sure.
have any more to say about that?
हाँ, डेफिनेटली. मतलब ये तो मैंने अभी जो पूरा बताया, दिस इज एन इंटरनल थिंग, बट देर आर external factors also, and personal factors besides this subconscious play, because ये तो consciously नहीं हो रहा है ना, तो we don't even know that we are doing this, but other than that कुछ ऐसे factors होते हैं which also keep you there. If I talk about personal factors, there are things like hope for change. Especially in relationships, we will always have this hope for change. Oh, something will change, something will change. ये एक्चुअली होप नहीं होता है, ये होता है विशफुल थिंकिंग, लेकिन हम इसको बोलते हैं होप. Right? It's like you are wishing for something to change in the absence of absolutely any evidence that it will change. Right? So that's wishful thinking. Another factor could be not knowing our boundaries. हमें पता ही नहीं होता है कि हमें क्या चाहिए और to what extent are we willing to go and where is enough. Because there's a thing also that in collective cultures, boundaries are not really encouraged as as something that is cultivated in children. Boundaries are seen as punishments. So if you restrict access to somebody, that means you're punishing that person. But वो healthy concept of boundaries कहीं पे cultivate किया नहीं जाता है. Another thing could be if you hold other people responsible for your happiness. If that's what you have learned, that कि वो पूरा एक नैरेटिव जो चलता है ना, कोई आएगा और फिर आपकी जिंदगी एकदम ब्यूटीफुल हो जाएगी, you will be rescued and all of that. अब वो ये कोई नहीं सोचता है. और इस चक्कर में पता है क्या होता है, दिस इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. हम पूरी जिंदगी whatever the dark parts that we have or the dark emotions or anything, हम उसको ऐसे कलेक्ट करते रहते हैं कि वो जब कोई आएगा तब हैंड ओवर कर देंगे और फिर सब ठीक हो जाएगा. विल जस्ट लाइक, हम ये सोचते हैं नहीं कि वो जो आएगा उसका अपना बैग भी आएगा साथ में. देन व्हाट इज गोइंग टू हैपन. ठीक है,
Yeah.
वही वही नहीं समझ में आता है कि अब दोनों का बैग आ गया, अब क्या अनपैक करें। मैंने तो सोचा था मेरा ही होगा, फिर ये क्या है, दिस इज, आई डोंट नो हाउ टू डील विद दिस, राइट? So that, and Bollywood has loved beautifully, like, um, exaggerated this whole idea, that then low self-esteem. If you have low self-esteem, then we think we deserve what we are getting, and there isn't anything better. So, agar if I'm being mistreated in a relationship, yeah, if the relationship is kind of not really fulfilling me, तो हम कहीं ना कहीं अगर लो सेल्फ एस्टीम होता है तो सोचने लगते हैं कि बट ठीक है, मतलब there's nothing else that can be better for me and this is what I deserve, so we stay. So these are some personal factors. Societal, like I said, media, pop culture, literature, all of that. One very important factor is that sacrifice is glorified in
Yeah.
society. So good person is the person who takes the most shit, right? So
Let's all
agar,
give a moment for that line. Yes, so true.
right? So if you're like, if you say you love someone, और चलो मैं एक दूसरा एग्जांपल ले लेती हूँ कि लेट्स से you're केयर गिविंग टू समवन हु इज एलिंग और समथिंग, राइट? तो you're doing something noble, but if you're doing something noble, you don't have a right to complain. You don't have a right to even express that you feel frustrated, you feel angry, you feel tired, because the moment you do that, everything else you do is neutralized. ठीक है, तो sacrifice is glorified a lot. सेकेंड, जब रिलेशनशिप्स की बात आती है तो आप जब किसी को, जैसे यूर कन्फाइडिंग इन समवन कि यार ये चल रहा है, वो चल रहा है, एंड even if you say that, I think I'm done, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore, generally people will, when they advise you or they will respond, they will weigh everything against worst case scenario, कि यार मार तो नहीं रहा ना,
Oh my God,
like,
yes, that's the exact line that came in my head. Mark Sonia.
ठीक है, और या पी के तो नहीं आता है, या लाइक दोस काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स. तो वर्स्ट केस सिनेरियो की बात करेंगे विदाउट थिंकिंग अबाउट क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ. क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ भी कोई चीज होती है ना. इफ आई एम इन अ रिलेशनशिप जहां पे एवरी डे आई एम struggling only, like there is no moment for me to have experience peace, calm, nurturance, nourishment, so my quality of life is destroyed. It doesn't matter if I'm not being hit, then I am doing it to myself, like then it's just, it's that. फिर वो एक forever वाला concept is also a societal thing, कि you enter a relationship or you enter a marriage and then you are loaded with this whole forever idea, and that becomes a burden. फिर वो psychologically, if you are weighing your pros and cons and all of that, आप हमेशा उसको एक बाउंडेशन पॉइंट से वे करते हो. सो you're always limiting yourself and then weighing your pros and cons, क्योंकि आपको ये लगता है कि मुझे जो करना है इसी में रह के करना है, और तो कोई आउटलेट है नहीं मेरे पास. Even though I understand that it's not ever easy to walk away from a marriage, but if you're operating from a limiting thought process, then you will always operate from subjugation and helplessness, which will bring different kind of responses from your brain when you're trying to brainstorm. ठीक है. And then finally we also make a lot of relationship based decisions, even parental relationships and all of that, based on how much explaining we'll have to do to people after taking the decision. यार इसको बोलना पड़ेगा, उसको बोलना पड़ेगा, कोई समझेगा नहीं, कैसे बताऊंगी, क्या बताऊंगी, या बताऊंगा, it's gender neutral, to be very honest. A lot of people think about these things, that how much will I have to explain and justify myself, and what if I can't justify myself? And nobody thinks about, but you, like, there's no need, but that's not encouraged, that thought process is not encouraged. And maybe gender roles is also something that is a societal factor, right? Both genders are kept trapped in certain kind of behaviors that they must execute to appear a certain way. So and that also plays a lot of role in somebody being stuck in a toxic dynamic. We have a very recent example in the news and the media that has happened, where what caught my eye in this entire thing was that they were going through so much and there was no thought process of even asking or checking or looking for professional help in this whole thing, right? And there are so many points that I've noticed, which are probably which could have been resolved by just going about it the right way, but all of that. So that way, yeah. So gender roles also are something that contributes to it. Anu?
Hmm. Thank you, Prachi. I think this gives a really uh, when you're saying these things, I'm able to like find areas in my life where this can fit or this has fit and this is working even now. I'm sure that's the case for everyone else listening as well. Which is why this topic is so relatable because each one of us can relate to some part of this or for sure.
Absolutely. I think all of us have probably at least met one person in our lives with which we can,
Yeah. I wish it was
relate the
just one.
toxicity.
I wish it was just one. I think I can count so many right now.
I know.
But
Yeah.
what I think the crux of this whole thing right now for me is okay. I know what it is and where it comes from and why I might find myself in one. But now what do I do? How do I, let's say, support myself, or
Mhm.
even better, like how do I support someone who I know I can see that they are, in a toxic relationship? What do I do then?
There are some very practical steps that you can take. First is to absolutely build a very strong support system. This can include family, friends, and when I say family, matlab, I just don't mean like immediate family. It can be cousins, it can be extended family, whatever. Family, friends, uh, people who don't just heighten your emotions, but they will also allow you to calmly process what is happening. I am very aware, although it should happen like that, but I'm also very aware of the fact that everybody doesn't go to a therapist.
Yeah.
और हमारा जो कल्चर है हमेशा से वी यूज टू हैव a lot of people, elders in the community and all of that who used to play that role of the sounding board and all, and that's why therapy is a fairly new concept in India, and that also used to work beautifully. But abhi, because things have become so complicated, sab aise everybody's become agenda driven, so we don't know whom to trust. But I think even if it's a handful of people, having a support network is very, very important. An ample amount of research has also proven that people who recover from trauma of abuse, of toxicity, and all of that, they always do better if they have a better support, social support. और सोशल सपोर्ट का मतलब ये नहीं कि आप सोशली एक्सेप्टेबल चीजें कर रहे हो. It's about having that tight knit group of people who are your safe space. So that's a very important aspect. Second is becoming more self-aware. Just that whole thing that I spoke about, emotional availability, unavailability and everything. That cannot happen until you have gone deeper into your own needs, your own psychological repertoire and what it contains. मैं कौन हूँ, क्या हूँ, क्योंकि हम नहीं सोचते इन चीजों के बारे में, एंड कोई स्कूल कॉलेज का करिकुलम कभी इस तरफ आपका ध्यान देता ही नहीं है. इट नेवर हैपेंस. यू नो my son is in 10th grade right now, and the pressure the school is putting on these kids for the board exams is laughable. And it's like, and I think Anu, your daughter also is in 10th, so probably you are also going through the same. I don't know if she's in a better school, I hope. But it's like crazy. And the interesting thing is that so they'll extend school hours saying we'll do extra classes, and they'll put the logic of everybody. So when kids say that we don't want extra classes, so they'll say no, everybody doesn't think like this, and everybody is not the same. But why are you not thinking that because everybody is not the same, they need to pay attention to how they learn and be allowed to do that, right? So that mindset is only not there. School, college, हम पूरे time कहीं भी हमारा कोई emotional intelligence का कोई ना तो chapter होता है ना कोई syllabus होता है. So that way, I think, and most people, to be honest, like my major clientele is between 25 to 45 years of age, and these are people who have now reached this end point and they are like, कुछ तो अब करना पड़ेगा. So then they are going into that whole thing of digging into themselves and becoming self-aware. तो जितना जल्दी आप ये कर लोगे उतना अच्छा है. You will need a good therapist, of course, for this, who can stand by you, who can help you do that. But it's really good for you in the long run if you are able to do that. So therefore, finding a therapist is another thing that you can use, and always look for the right person. You have the right to. ये डॉक्टर पेशेंट रिलेशनशिप की तरह नहीं है दैट आप जाओगे वो 4 दवाइयां बोलेंगे एंड देन दिल से डोंट, तुम डॉक्टर हो कि मैं डॉक्टर हूँ, जो बोला जा रहा है वो कर लो. It's not like that. So when you meet a therapist, you should always do therapist shopping. You should always meet 4 or 5 different therapists, look into their style of work, have interview sessions with them, maybe 30-minute session or like a pay for a full session, but do that for yourself because you deserve it. For buying a pair of jeans, we will go into 5 different shops and trial rooms and all kinds of things. But we don't do that for a therapist. एक गलत experience हो गया तो we hold back. But you have to do that therapist shopping and ask them questions about their experience. How much experience do they have with the area that you are struggling with? Their qualifications, experience, all of that. It's very important, and you have all the right to do it. And another thing that you can do is actively work on going back to who you used to be before the relationship went downhill. Because it's very easy to lose yourself. The entire life can become about that one turmoil that is happening. फिर हम सब भूल जाते हैं, all hobbies, all interests, friendships, सब everything takes a backseat. The more you are able to go back to who you used to be, get in touch with who you used to be, the stronger it makes you. It reminds you that there are more facets to you which have gotten buried and which need to be coming up, because that brings clarity of thought to make whatever decision you need to make about the relationship, whether it is to seek help, whether it is to end it, uh, whether it is to have a conversation. But आपको clarity चाहिए. Clarity तभी आएगी when you're out of that emotional vortex that has gotten created. And finally, learn to establish boundaries. Boundaries, again, is a very loaded term, and ऐसे थोड़ा लोगों को एकदम से थोड़ा overwhelming लगता है the moment they hear it. But use therapy, use books, use workshops. Even if you attend like a 2-day workshop somebody is doing, it will still add something. थोड़ा करके, you collect your resources and then learn how to do it. And it's going to really help you in the long run, because boundaries are not about shutting doors on people or creating walls. They are about first learning what is it that works for me, and then communicating it to the people around you. And
Thank you. Thank you, Prachi. So, what I'm hearing is support system, get a therapist, become more self-aware, remember who you are, like, Mufasa says in Lion King, remember who you
yeah,
are.
yes.
And
Oh, Lion King has some, like pearls
beautiful
of
wisdom.
wisdom.
Absolutely. I love that movie. And then boundaries.
Yeah.
And these are kind of things that, I have to remember myself when I find myself in a toxic relationship. But even if I look at it from the other perspective, as to if I see some near and dear ones in a toxic relationship, this is how I would also provide support, right? By being the sounding board, being the person who allows them to express themselves, remember themselves,
Yes. Yes.
help them to draw those boundaries. And all of this is done again at the foundation is always the same, with listening, with being supportive, non-judgmental, all of those things. Um,
Absolutely. I
yeah.
mean, to what you're saying, I think if you want to be a support for somebody, then what Anu said, like you have to be a neutral support. You have to just give a space to really listen without fueling the fire. कितनी भी bias हो रही हो, कितना भी आप protective feel कर रहे हो उसके लिए, it's not your job to make their choices. You just have to give them that space. You have to give them options, alternatives. These alternatives can come based on your understanding, other stories that you know, but it's never a forced thing, right? One of the great ways to support a person is to find them a good therapist. You can offer to book the first appointment, you can give them a first appointment, you can go with them to the first appointment, and give that one nudge that sometimes people need. Sometimes even basic things of providing support, like in terms of space, like you can come and stay with me for a day, like just decompress, or food or care, giving them some downtime. You know what, let's go for a little bit of a walk somewhere today, and just giving them that little pocket of peace that they probably are missing in their lives, which always allows them to rise above that emotional aspect that they are feeling. So if you're trying to support another person, the only thing I'll say is that always remember that the goal is to empower that person to make their own decision. It is not to force your viewpoint on them, no matter how well intentioned it is. Nobody's questioning your intention, but it's not going to work. So you have to empower the other person. That's the only, I think, guiding principle to keep in mind if you're trying to support a loved.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I know I promised everyone 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A, but it was so interesting. I told you I have 1,000 questions that we have run over until almost the last 6 minutes. I would like to open the floor for Q&A if there is any, but before that, Ujjwala, if you wouldn't mind sharing the feedback form. It will take you just a minute to do it, and you can do it while you're asking the questions, and Prati is helping us sort our thoughts out. Anyone, if you have a question, feel free to unmute, switch on your videos if you can, and let's have a discussion. If there are no questions, I'm going to. I mean, I always have a ton of questions, but I will
No,
see if
I think
any.
I've spoken so much that probably like a lot of
It's a
people would
lot
be
of
like, अच्छा ठीक है, यही
processing.
पूछना था, हो गया, अब
Yeah.
नहीं.
No, it is a lot of processing as well if you think about it, because we do find we are.
Yeah.
It is so relatable, and it's so intense for most of us, that it takes some time to kind of, let it sink in.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts, any quick comments? I know a lot of
Yeah,
people
if
said,
you want to share
yeah,
something that has come up for you, by listening to all of this, and oh, that we are getting some questions in the chat. Okay.
I think,
Very heavy and intense to absorb. I understand, Jay.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's not easy to hear about these things. बहुत सारा, it hits you a lot of times. So absolutely take your time.
We
Uma
do
has
have a
asked,
question. Yeah,
what about people who look for validation and get into relationships? Same principle applies, Uma, because if you're looking for validation, if validation is what seems to uh, boost your self image or self esteem, and if it is only externally motivated, so then again you are operating from a place of a void within you. तो आप हमेशा फिर वही स्कैर्सिटी माइंडसेट, तो आप उधर जाओगे जहां क्रिटिकलिटी ज्यादा मिलेगी. ठीक है, जो मैंने अवेलेबिलिटी का पहले फंडा समझाया था, इट इज दैट. सो यू आर मोर लाइकली टू गेट अट्रैक्टेड टू समवन हु इज एक्चुअली मोर क्रिटिकल एंड डिसअप्रूविंग ऑफ यू, वेयर एज व्हाट यू आर क्रेविंग इज वैलिडेशन. So then it's like, then you keep spending your time and your energy and all of that into just earning that validation. So you have to remember, when it comes to love, romantic love or non-romantic love, there is no concept of having to earn it. So if any equation is making you feel like that, then there is something wrong over there. There's something wrong in terms of the dynamic which is there. The person may not be a bad person, but there is a challenge in how we are, what we are going towards. Because love does not need to be earned. So I hope that answers your question. Vaishnavi is
we have a bunch
asking,
more.
yeah, Vaishnavi is asking your views on red flags and green flags during the round. Okay. So by the way, Vaishnavi is somebody from my team, and she's been a mentee of mine for like, I think about 4 or 5 years now, Vaishnavi. Yeah.
Years now. Yeah.
So yeah, so good question, I think. And इसके लिए मेरा एक standard answer होता है कि पहली बात तो I think it's very difficult to divide people so categorically into like red and green and beige, and now there are yellow flags, I believe, and all kinds of labeling.
Yeah.
किसी भी चीज को आप जितना भी ज्यादा कैटेगरीज में डिवाइड करते जाओगे ना, उतना आप लॉस्ट होते जाओगे. दैट्स नॉट, fluidity is the name of the game. But when it comes to red flags, I think what I've realized is that there are two categories of red flags that happen. One is something which is a universal red flag, like disrespect. like violence. Okay, these are universal red flags. It does not matter what the reason was, you cannot raise a hand, no matter who it is, a man or a woman. Okay. Second, डिसरिस्पेक्ट इज डिसरिस्पेक्ट, उसका कोई मतलब मीटर नहीं होता है कि ये कम है ये ज्यादा है एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट. सो ये यूनिवर्सल वाले होते हैं. तो इफ समवन इज शोइंग यू देम दीज काइंड ऑफ ट्रेट्स, तो इसमें तो क्वेश्चन करना ही नहीं है. यू जस्ट हैव टू टेक अ स्टेप बैक. कुछ होते हैं इंडिविजुअल रेड फ्लैग्स विच आर यूनिक टू एवरी पर्सन. व्हेन आई से इंडिविजुअल रेड फ्लैग्स, मतलब आपका जो पर्सोना है या आपके जो अनकॉन्शियस मोटिव्स हैं, आपके जो साइकोलॉजिकल रेpertoire है, उसके लिए व्हाट आर द थिंग्स विच विल बी रेड फ्लैग्स. जैसे कि जो दैट इमोशनल वाला एग्जांपल दैट आई गिव, अवेलेबिलिटी वाला. So for somebody who comes from a background of emotional unavailability, somebody who's not providing free flowing love, somebody who's intermittently present, somebody who's critical, that is a red flag. Not because the person is a red flag, but because the dynamic is a red flag. So you have to pay attention to both categories when you're thinking about red flags and green flags. Then Shobha is asking, is it possible for parents who have toxic relationship to heal by going for therapy? Yes, scope is there, for sure. लेकिन थोड़ा सा मैं realistically अगर बोलूं तो like the parents of our parents' generation, they approach therapy very differently, because their mindset is different. Their entire way of looking at the world is very different, and a lot of those things that they do are actually their crutches. It is their framework that they have built around their lives to be able to survive whatever they survive. तो अब जब वो थेरेपी में आते हैं, if they are like 60-65 years old, if therapy tries to dismantle that, imagine what will happen to somebody in the age of 60-65 who will be left without these defenses, because there's very little time for them to start a new life. Like हमारे नजरिए से वो लाइफ को देखें, बाउंड्रीज को देखें, रिलेशनशिप्स को देखें, वो पॉसिबल नहीं होता. तो when parents are coming into therapy, and I'm not talking about millennial parents, I'm right now talking about हमारे age के parents, 50s, 60s. Then as a child also, as their child, we will have to keep realistic expectations of what can be achieved. So don't expect a total overhaul and a total transformation, but maybe aim for better communication, a better respect for each other's spaces, privacy, autonomy, all of that, but not like thinking कि वो एकदम से millennial mindset या Gen Z mindset में आ जाएंगे. That's something that has to be realistically approached.
अच्छा, मुझे भी एक क्वेश्चन है.
हाँ जी.
वैसे 15 साल से हमारा कोई हमारा दोस्त है, तो अगर 10-15 साल ऐसे ही चल जाता समझ लो, तो अगर लास्ट जो 2-3-4 इयर्स में हमें पता चल रहा है कि ये बहुत टॉक्सिक है, तो हम उससे बैक करना चाह रहे हो, ठीक है, तो टॉक्सिक है, लेकिन सेम डे मुझे रिलेशनशिप तो चाहिए भी, क्योंकि वो मेरी दोस्त था एक टाइम में, ठीक. तो उसका तो हम बैक करने से उनको बहुत प्रॉब्लम तो होता ही होगा, लेकिन हमें तो उसका फ्रेंडशिप चाहिए, लेकिन उसका टॉक्सिसिटी तो हम अफोर्ड नहीं कर पा रहे. तो उस टाइम हम क्या करें, क्योंकि एक्चुअली उसको भी तो, वो तो फिर टॉक्सिक ही रहेगा, उसको तो हम चेंज नहीं कर सकते, हम अपन को तो चेंज कर सकता. उस सिचुएशन में क्या कर सकते, हम क्या कंप्लीटली हम अवॉइड कर
अमेजिंग
सकते?
क्वेश्चन, व्हाट एन अमेजिंग क्वेश्चन अमोल. बहुत अच्छा क्वेश्चन आपने पूछा और बहुत अच्छे से इसको आर्टिकुलेट किया है कि फ्रेंडशिप तो चाहिए लेकिन टॉक्सिसिटी नहीं चाहिए.
Yes.
और आपके क्वेश्चन में ही आंसर है. जब हमें एक चीज चाहिए और एक चीज नहीं चाहिए, तो हमें क्या करना होता है? फिल्टरिंग. राइट. सो व्हाट आई वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट बाउंड्रीज, कि आपको फिर ये फिगर आउट करना होगा कि आप इस फ्रेंडशिप को दोबारा से रीडिफाइन कैसे करोगे in your own mind and your own private space. के जैसे मान लो, मैं एक एग्जांपल बोलती हूँ कि आपने फ्रेंड बोला इसलिए मैं फ्रेंडशिप का एग्जांपल दे रही हूँ कि
Yes,
मान लो मेरी
yes.
स्कूल टाइम की कोई फ्रेंड थी जिसको मैं सारे सीक्रेट्स बताती थी, सारा कुछ शेयर करती थी एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट. ठीक है. आई थॉट सो, मुझे लगा. ठीक है. तो अब लेकिन आफ्टर फ्यू इयर्स मेरे को ये रियलाइज हो रहा है कि यार मतलब जब मैं इसको बताती हूँ तो चीजें और गड़बड़ हो जाती है, ठीक है, और प्रॉब्लम हो जाती है। तो अब क्या करें, क्योंकि कंपेनियनशिप तो चाहिए, तो अब हमको वो रीडिफाइन करना है, हमको खुद के लिए बाउंड्री सेट करना है कि दिस इज व्हाट इज एक्सेप्टेबल फॉर मी टू शेयर, और दिस इज समथिंग आई विल होल्ड क्लोज टू माई सेल्फ। और शायद आप क्योंकि हम भी लाइफ के साथ इवॉल्व होते रहते हैं ना, तो जो जिस तरह की फ्रेंडशिप हमें मे बी 20s में अट्रैक्ट करती थी वो 40s में नहीं अट्रैक्ट करेगी, 40s में कुछ एक अलग टाइप का पर्सनालिटी हमको अट्रैक्ट करेगा फॉर अ फ्रेंड। सो मे बी मैं वो एक्सपैंड करने की कोशिश करूं और मैं देखूं कि जो लोग मेरे सिमिलर लाइफ स्पेस में हैं उनसे क्या मैं नई फ्रेंडशिप कल्टिवेट कर सकती हूँ वाइल कीपिंग दिस वन इंटैक्ट, बट लिमिटिंग द एक्सेस। आपको फिल्टर करना होगा इस फ्रेंडशिप को। सेम जो आप मे बी 15 ईयर्स की एज पे जब आप उस फ्रेंडशिप को देखते थे, जैसे इस इंसान को देखते थे, उसको भी आपको इवॉल्व करना पड़ेगा। आपको सोचना पड़ेगा कि आज की डेट में ये इंसान मुझे क्या पिक्चर दिखा रहा है, क्या एविडेंस दे रही है, क्या उसका क्या आज का ट्रेट है, एंड आज अगर मैं इस इंसान से मिलती तो मैं किस लेवल का फ्रेंडशिप रखती। दैट विल बी योर गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल।
उसमें एक और क्वेश्चन है, तो लेकिन वो पर्सन के साथ मेरा रिलेशनशिप है, तो उसको पता है कि मेरा हर चीज उससे शेयर होता था, तो अब उसको पता चल रहा है मैं कुछ चीज हाइड कर रही हूँ, तो बोल रही है कि फिर पूछते रहेंगे कि तुम क्यों मेरे से पहले जैसे नहीं, मैं उससे मुझे बहुत
तो
टेंशन हो रही है,
उनको
उनको
सीधे बोल दो कि मैं खुद पहले जैसी नहीं हूं, तो मैं तुम्हारे साथ कैसे पहले जैसी। सिंपल है ना।
ठीक है।
I think throughout the session, Prachi, your one-liners have stuck with me. So many of them. I think I should go back on the video and like write them down. Beautiful. Really
Thank you.
potent
Thank you.
one-liner.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Amol, and
you.
thank you everyone for asking the
Thank you.
questions. That was
I
really-
have
I'm
one
sorry.
question.
Sneha,
Sorry.
Yeah,
just give me
Sneha.
a second.
Yes, I have a
Just give me 1 second.
okay. I have a question related. Oh, you sorry.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to close the session so that whoever needs to leave can leave because we are over the time. Firstly, thank you, Prachi. This has been, I think, eye-opening for me for sure, and I'm sure it is for others as well.
My pleasure.
I think we will definitely want you to come again and again. I can't wait to speak to you again. Really enjoyed our interaction as well, and thank you everyone else for being there and being interactive. Um, I would like to close the session, but if Prati, you're okay to take whatever the last one more question,
Yeah.
we
Sneha,
can
go
take
ahead.
that. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. But like adding to what